Imagine we can create an organization where people love to want to choose to be. Imagine you can come to work and it's one of the most meaningful parts of your day. And you come to a workplace where you feel challenged appropriately, you feel stretched, you feel rewarded, you feel like you're part of that emotional salary.
I liked how you described it, emotional salary. That's very important, getting that emotional salary as well as the financial salary. I'm Serdar Kabul, I'm a business broker. We are having a podcast here with Cobus. Cobus used to be my neighbor, that's how we met. And he is a clinical psychologist. Is that the right term?
That's right,
Cobus?
yes.
Yeah. Clinical psychologist. He has recently moved to New Zealand from South Africa. He's going to share us his story, what made him move to New Zealand, and we will learn a little bit more about Cobus, what Cobus does as a clinical psychologist, and how he helps people in his practice. So Cobus, welcome.
Thank you, Serdar.
Good to see you here,
Appreciate it.
and thanks very much for accepting this and coming here for my first ever podcast, I guess it's called. And thanks for helping me set up the camera as well. It was probably an experience for you and for me at the same time.
It's a bit of history in the making, I feel.
Yes.
You know, first, yes.
Cool. Thank you for that. Cobus, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes.
Just I introduced you, but want to hear from you as well.
I'm Cobus du Plessis, and born and raised in South Africa. And we moved here in March 2021. So we just escaped the dreaded in South Africa to run into it in New Zealand. So we had an extended COVID period, first in South Africa and then here, but just glad we were over all of that and life carries on as not the usual, but the new usual, at least.
That's the beauty of New Zealand. It's made up of lots of people from different backgrounds. Cobus, I have a set of questions here. I will start asking you. I think it will help me and help our audience to learn more about you. So can you tell us about your journey from South Africa to New Zealand? What made you make this move?
It's a funny thing. My wife always nagged me to move overseas, and I've always said, no, I'll be the last one to leave. I'll switch off the lights. But about 4 years before I moved, something changed. I can't actually explain it. And there was just this feeling that the time is now to start looking at opportunities. Maybe it's the age, knowing that time is running out. But started looking at different opportunities. Always wanted to work overseas. South Africa is a great place, but you sometimes feel like you can't test your mettle. And I've always wanted to come and test myself in a first world country and just explore more and have more. And that's where it started. And so we started speaking about it, became more real, and then we started looking for opportunities here. And the funny story is, my recruitment agent phoned me and said, I think I found somebody who actually knows you. And this guy was a student at the uni where I was lecturing as a guest lecturer. And he ended up being my boss in New Zealand.
Oh, that's a good story.
Yeah.
It's a coincidence.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's the story of New Zealand. It's one degree of separation, you know. It's so small, everybody knows everybody.
That's right, exactly right. And that's how I feel. Sometimes you do some work with someone in Auckland and then bump into someone in Queenstown or Dunedin, knows that person. We sometimes forget how small New Zealand is. Like really, we are a good local community as a country. Everyone knows each other. I'll come to my next question, Cobus. What inspired you to choose a career in psychology?
That's a very good question. I often wonder whether I chose the career or the career chose me. Come from a family of teachers and grew up with that idea of some careers are actually more like a calling. And I think I've come to understand and accept the fact that I think psychology is a calling in its own. In high school, I was one of those people where people would often come to ask questions, to bounce ideas, to talk about stuff, to share secrets. And then when I left school, I realized, but there's actually something of that in my DNA. And then started studying and discovered the whole career path towards psychology. And one night I was sitting all by my lonesome studying, and I read something that made sense for me in terms of my own life. And I had this light bulb moment. First about myself, and then the second light bulb moment was, if I can change or shift something for myself, why not do that for others? And I started looking at what that would look like, and then started further on the trajectory towards psychology.
That's really good to hear. Actually, it is a big meaning behind why you choose it and aligns with what you do as well. Yeah. And I can tell, like, I think you have this personality. People feel comfortable, or people feel
Thanks.
to come in and ask you questions, just get your opinion about it. Because when you were our neighbor, Amanda told me that Cobus always listens when you talk, and he pays attention. It just feels like someone always listens, even you are not practicing. As a person, I think you are prone to listen to people. I think that's a very important skill, and makes people very comfortable to talk to you.
Thanks, man. That's a big compliment.
I'll go to my other question. What unique perspective do you bring to your field as a result of diverse background?
I think I was very fortunate to start off my career. I want to tell you a funny story. Early on in my career as a psychologist, I started venturing into training and development, and then we ventured into EAP and contracting to EAPs, the employment assistance programs. And there was this big contract with one of our state-owned enterprises, and we sat around the boardroom table, and the CFO was there, and we were all very nervous. It's kind of a new business venture within psychology. And we were trying to sales pitch what we can offer. And he asked me this exact question, the CFO. He asked me, what do you bring that's different? And I said to him, you have somebody who can think like a clinical psychologist and understand business. And he started laughing. He laughed. He said, that's an oxymoron. A psychologist that understands business, that doesn't exist. And that stuck with me for a very long time. And it bothered me because I love the idea of working with individuals, working with teams, and with organizations. Because if you sit in private practice, you can only reach so many people. But if you work with a business manager, or with a team, or with a business owner, you impact that whole system. And very early on, I love the work we do individually, but thought, what's the more? And that question disturbed me, or that laughter around the boardroom table disturbed me, because I thought to myself, then I want to become that. I want to be able to understand the business world and the complexity of that, and be able to bring the thinking of psychology into that space. And so from there on, it's like my career had two parallel trajectories. Private practice, lecturing a bit, but also this immersing myself slowly into the world of business. And I think that's part of the uniqueness that I would love to bring in New Zealand. I see that there is a gap in terms of what psychology can bring to business that is not filled yet. Yeah. And we know that there's a saying that says managers are some of the loneliest people on the planet. And I guess it's because when you're in that position of managing, people look up at you, they put you a little bit on a pedestal, and they expect you to have it all together. And so you act like you have it all together. And sometimes, and the same goes for the entrepreneur. And within that, there's a lot of things that goes around in your own head and your own heart. And it's hard to find somebody that can speak your language, understands your landscape, and can bring solutions. And so I think that is one of the things that I'd love to venture into here in New Zealand.
I think it's a great point. Entrepreneurs, business owners, managers, it generally is a lonely journey. There is nobody to talk to, take all the responsibilities themselves. I think there is a huge gap. I think you are filling that gap, bringing the thinking of psychology into it. I think it's all about the journey. The result, it matters.
I love that, yeah.
But the journey also is important because we spend time on it. And if you make their journey more comfortable than how it is, I think it's a big value to deliver to the entrepreneurs in that journey.
I love that idea of journey because, you know, if you go on holiday and you go to a specific place, we often make the mistake of thinking that the holiday starts when we arrive at their destination. So you rush and you cram everything, and usually there's so much stress just to get to the... But if you reset the mindset and say, the journey starts now with the packing and the travel there and stopping off along the way, then that is a lot less stressful and seamless. And I think very often, having had my own business in South Africa for about 15 years, you know how lonely it gets, you know how stressed out you get, you know how you sometimes feel like you're running into a wall because you can't speak to your employees, you don't always feel comfortable speaking to other business owners. And a lot of business owners and managers would, in the past, say to me, I don't need a psychologist, there's nothing wrong with me. But what I need is a sounding board. And I realized that the idea of business coaching or mentoring is a lot more comfortable for people in the business setting. And that's why I started looking at other modalities like coaching and mentoring and positioning that within business so that you can bring something that is holistic and healing and seamless, but they don't feel like and you go to them. Because coming and sitting on the couch makes people feel strange sometimes. They feel like there's something wrong. So just those subtle changes. And I love the fact that you call it a journey, because I think in terms of psychology, that's the emotional salary. Speaking to somebody and you can see their journey change and you can see something positive happen, or you speak to somebody and you can see nothing of the situation has changed, but in their eyes, something has clicked over, something has changed.
True. I totally agree with you about the journey starts from packing, not at the destination. Because I used to stress out all this preparation, travel time. I was putting a lot of stress on myself, my family, just to enjoy when we reach the destination. But you are actually making the whole experience is worse to start with, and then with a hope that you will hopefully enjoy when you reach the destination. So it actually should be a good experience from start. It should be something memorable, something relaxed, something good experience. And I try to change that. I think I've done quite well on that. Yeah,
and it's so funny because the intention is to go and have fun and relax. And so we end up having our biggest family fights in the car on the way to the place where we want to go and relax. And then you get there and okay, just let it go and relax.
But exactly. Yes. Sometimes you're better off not to do it if you start
just stay home.
Yeah.
I think also just to convince the others on the journey.
Yeah.
To do the journey thing and not the destination thing.
True.
That's sometimes hard. But anyway.
I may need your help for that, to convince the others coming with me.
Yes.
Okay. And also I liked you are a clinical psychologist, but also you run your own business. So you actually were in the shoes of the people you are helping as well, and bringing the psychology thinking to your services. Also, I noticed that I checked your LinkedIn account yesterday. You have business coaching training as well, as you actually provide support to business as well as the person behind the business. It's a great combination for the business owners to take advantage of.
And globally, we see a trend within coaching that more and more managers are going on coaching training because the soft skills we learn are sometimes more valuable than our technical skills as a manager. And I guess that's always the trick with people progressing through the pipeline is you get promoted on, you get up, you dress up, you show up and you perform and you get promoted. But the soft skills that goes with the next level in the leadership pipeline, every time we go to the next level, the paradigm shifts. Here I take care of myself. Now I take care of a group of people. Now a division. And every time the paradigm shifts, but there's not necessarily the journey managers who helps us with those shifts. And what I've realized with business is we don't actually understand the difference between different conversational modalities. So an employee would come to me with a problem and I throw the whole kitchen sink at them. But there's a distinct difference between having a leadership conversation from having a management conversation, from having a coaching conversation or a therapeutic conversation. So what I've done for myself is I've spent a lot of time thinking about what is the essential difference between those conversations. And in the training and development space, there's an area that I worked in for a long time called organizational development. In that space, to help people understand the difference between those different type of conversations, and to also help people train up in terms of mentoring and coaching. Because when your workforce is happy, your business shows the results.
True, true. The employees are the backbone of the businesses. If they are happy where they are, that will contribute to success of the business.
I went to a talk by Donald Sull. If I'm not mistaken, he's with MIT and he was with the London Business School for a very long time.
Yeah.
And he took Porter's 4 forces and he expanded it. And he now speaks about the 5 P's. And he says business needs to focus on package, position, price, product, and the one that we focus least on is people. And he went to the Fortune 500 companies and he did longitudinal research, and he found his estimation was around about 60 to 70% of your bottom line improvement lies in improving how you do people in the business.
True.
And all the others we've maxed out. Your position in the market, your product, your packaging, those are maxed. Some people get to a point where you're in a corner, but where we can actually change the bottom line is how we do people and people relations. And the moment that they are happy and they feel like they are contributing to something more, there's a sense of mastery, there's a sense of belonging, the bottom line starts showing it as well.
True, true. I've read a few books, I don't remember the names of those books now, but a few billionaires and multimillionaires in the States. Couple of books were about investing on people. Keep investing them, and they say the long term it always comes back to you and contribute to your success. There are individuals out there make great success in their life by investing in their people.
And I guess in the world of business today, where we have the opportunities and threats of AI, the one thing you cannot replace is human relation. You can duplicate, you can substitute, you can automate, but you can't change the way we do relationships. The moment you are with somebody, and he has the saying where they see people leaving companies because of managers, not because of the company, which goes back to the relationship. So one of my personal sayings always is relationship before function. The function is secondary to the relationship. And that's something that no one can replace. And if that's good quality, people go the extra mile. We don't have to spend money downstream to motivate them, to launch a program to get them productive, because it's born out of that relational quality.
I think this works really well for small businesses where the owner is in the business with maybe up to 20, 30 employees, because owner is still involved, owner's relationship with the employees. So really makes a difference how the employees work in the business or stay in the business. What do you think about in a corporate level where there are thousands of employees or over 100 employees, managers constantly changing? So how do you think the relationship can be implemented in a corporate level where it doesn't necessarily rely on the individual, it relies on the whole structure of the company, where everything can still work?
It's important to have a large organizational structure run independent of people's personalities and people's skill sets. Because it makes us dependent on a person and not a system. So that's one part of the balancing act. I think the thing that comes to mind is culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Culture, that's right.
And so it's the top-down design.
Yeah.
And this is where organizational development comes in. So me as a large corporate, do I have a defined vision that the people have bought into? This is where we're going. Once I've got that vision, I need some strategic pointers. Not too many, 2 or 3. Everything then aligns to getting to that vision. But where's my values? Values that people can, you've been in the military, take the rank off, put it on the table, and now we can hold each other accountable, because these values are more important than the hierarchical relations.
True.
And so this takes intentionality. We need to systematically and intentionally design the system, top down. And the problem is we often try and fix it bottom up. And I think there's no silver bullet. It takes elbow grease, it takes time, It takes investment of your resources. And it's very hard sometimes to convince the decision makers around the boardroom table. Your CFO will go, where's the ROI? This is the return on capital employed. What's it going to look like? And you can't pull up a stats or a Excel spreadsheet and say, this is what it's going to be. But what we will see in the long run are happier, more engaged, more purposeful employees that would willingly give you that extra mile. Whereas if we don't do that, we have to fight for the extra mile. We have to fight for the hour after time or overtime. We have to fight for coming. We used to have the saying, people come to the job, and when they check in, they leave their heart outside, and they come in, and it's from the neck down. They're just a warm body in the seat. How do we get the whole person into the business? Head, heart, and hands. How do we get them in? And I guess if companies...
Well, it will cost you more if you don't, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In the long run, it's going to be agonizing. You're going to spend time, effort, money to get people activated. Imagine we can create an organization where people love to, want to, choose to be. Imagine you can come to work and it's one of the most meaningful parts of your day. And you come to a workplace where you feel challenged appropriately, you feel stretched, you feel rewarded, you feel like you're part of that emotional salary. Because people don't, especially now after COVID, people have become a lot more picky about where they put their energy, how they do that, how they're going to invest. So I think after COVID, there's a much bigger onus on organizations to make it an attractive option, to actually be at work. Whether that's remote or in the office, doesn't really matter, but more so if it's remote. How do I get the whole person?
I liked how you described it, emotional salary. That's very important, getting that emotional salary as well as the financial salary. Waking up in the morning with this enthusiasm and excitement to go to work rather than pressing the button and delaying 5 more minutes.
I guess organizations need to strike the balance between the transactional work and the transformational work. And the balance would look different for every company. The transactional stuff is what makes the cogs turn. That's the transactional stuff. It has to happen. But the transformational stuff is, how do we do it differently? How do we do it in a way that we look after profit as well as planet as well as people? The old triple bottom line thing.
True. Off the script, but because it has been really exciting so to talk about this. Let me ask you another question, which is, Cobus, introduce us the range of services you provide in your clinical practice.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I'm going to focus less on private practice, but more on the broader range of services. So private practice includes everything from people going through a change of life to serious mental health challenges. Do work in the space with ACC and individual. But where I would like to focus is more on the range of services that is open to the broader public. And that's in the organizational space and the training and developmental space. So the 3 areas, my 4-pronged approach for starting my business this year is going to focus on private practice, looking at psychometric assessments, especially in the organizational space. How do we better understand the people in our organization, them, their team functioning, their strengths, their developmental areas? So that's the second prong of the strategic approach. The third one is around coaching and mentoring. So one-on-one or groups within organizations. And then the last space is around the workplace wellness with a specific focus on health and safety and emotional health and safety. There's some exciting new developments in that domain that I'd love to introduce here in New Zealand.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the health and safety, I think, is a big thing. More and more regulations and rules come to place for businesses. Definitely, I think business owners can really take advantage of that service.
2 things I've seen in New Zealand within organizations is that people spend a lot of money when the health and safety around mental health and safety has gone wrong. So it's almost flying under the radar until the point where it becomes a problem. And then companies spend ludicrous amount of money. A snippet you often hear in New Zealand is the ambulance at the end of the cliff or at the bottom of the cliff. So we kind of leave things until they become problematic. And then it takes a lot of effort and investment to try and fix it. But it's very often too late. The damage has already been done to the organization and the teams and the individual. So one way to do it is to do it up front, to start understanding where can I, in terms of my continuous improvement, do things better so that my employees' mental well-being is taken care of. And that is going to cost me way less than being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff.
Yep.
And the other thing that I've seen is statistics around our productivity in New Zealand, that it's comparably low to other developed countries. And I guess if you look at organizations, just as with us as individuals, organizations also have signs that they are not well. High absenteeism rate, high disengagement, people having regular sick leave, people not doing the extras. So there's a whole list of things that we can look at to see how healthy is the culture. And when the culture is not healthy, we see lower productivity.
True.
So I think those are two areas that I'm very keen to explore. In the olden days, I developed this phrase, creative solutions backed by scientific certainty. So we come in with psychometric assessments, with the science of psychology, and we come to understand the business, and we tailor-make solutions for that business.
The first point you mentioned, that ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, that's the main thing I see in my business as well. I'm a big believer of prevention costs way less than something already has happened and you try to fix it. Same applies to my business. Now, if I put enough time and effort to preparation, prevent what could have happened from the beginning, and I find you eliminate the risk of facing objections or facing issues throughout the process significantly, and you achieve a good result.
And I guess coming to know you over the last few years, that's one thing that struck me about you, is you have that set of technical skills, but you're also very relational. You've got a way of investing in really helping the care that you feel for people translate in the business. And those are the complementarities that makes it go from a transaction to something where people go, I'd refer. And it's because we can do the emotional intelligence bit, knowing where the other person is at, understanding their concerns, and then doing what is appropriate to kind of ease those concerns and make the emotional part of the transaction much easier than the technical side, because we take care of the technical side in our business, but it's the emotional side. That's the edge. That's the sharp edge.
True. Oh, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. There's no better satisfaction than you achieving the result for your client and seeing your client happy. I guess the part of the business I like, what I do, seeing that satisfaction apart from the financial reward I receive after that.
That's your emotional salary.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And I guess what I've often seen, Sarda, is companies or people or managers or teams would come to you and say, there's something missing. We're doing all of this right. We've got this and this policy in place, this procedure in place. We're doing this exactly to the letter of the law. So everything transactionally is squeaky clean and perfect, but there's no relational bit, or there's bits lacking in the relational side. And more, I guess, if you look at marketing, what the internet did to marketing, suddenly you have an informed buyer force that do their homework before they come to you. They already know the comparisons. There's websites for comparisons. What's going to be the discerning difference between you and the next provider? It's relational. If you're all the same transactionally, then relationship becomes the tipping point.
True.
For me, that concept I refer to as relational equity, because you're building an equity with somebody that goes far beyond anything you can do technically or business-wise. And I think when we do it because we want to and choose to do it, it translates to the customer. And when you then do have small mistakes along the way, when you do have issues or when there's an impasse in the relationship, it gives that forgivability quality, because there's a relationship and they will trust you on basis of that relationship's equity rather than just the technical skills.
True. I think this is what relationship is about. At the end of the day, we are human. We are all human. We do mistakes. So that relationship assures that you will carry on and providing good services or products to your customers. Cobus, can you share some success stories or significant experiences you have had with your clients in New Zealand? I know you haven't been here for long. You can tell anything to clients from South Africa as well. You have been here how long again?
2 years and a few months.
2 years, yeah.
In March next year, it'll be 3 years.
Correct.
Yes. We have a consortium of people that banded together to do some work for one of the major retailer groups. And it was more of a consultative process, and it was exactly around that of developing return to work, workplace safety assessments, and taking care of the mental health and safety of the employees. And so what we did is we consulted onto them. We created some processes and we created assessment templates for them. And we ran probably 4 or 5 samples of that for them. And eventually they took this in-house as their process and policy. And this is a retailer that operates both here and across the ditch. So I guess that is a nice story, because we could actually go in and help them develop the processes from a clinical psychology perspective, understand what the business needs are, and create that hybrid solution.
Great. It sounds like a big project you involved.
It was big-ish, but it was more on the starting of their journey, not knowing how to approach it. So they wanted the clinical psychology inputs with a bit of the business understanding. And then from there, they took it on.
Okay. I guess you answered this question previously, but I'm asking it anyway. What are the main challenges your clients face?
One of the things I see in New Zealand that is quite rife is ADHD for adults. And it's a very contentious space. The people of our age, some younger and some older, would know the story very well, that when we grew up, ADHD didn't really exist, and more so for boys than for girls. Later on, we understood ADHD in terms of boys more than girls. So I see a lot of people taking a lot of strain because they were never diagnosed. Some people learned some strategies of how to cope with it, and medication is not always the only solution. But for a lot of people, there's that watershed moment when they actually realize that they do get diagnosed with ADHD, and they can look back across the pattern of their life and understand why things happened or didn't happen. And when they start on that journey of just understanding it, coming to terms with what they've had, it's a massive relief, because some people think something majorly is wrong with me. Whereas there's a beautiful word within Te Ao Māori where it does not speak of ADHD, not attention deficit disorder. It says your attention tends to go to various places at the same time, rather than in a specific direction. And so ADHD, in some instances, are a gift, because people have gifted ways of thinking. But it also creates problems for them, sometimes in relationships, sometimes with impulse control. So I've recently attended training on adult ADHD, and it's one of the areas where I'd like to, on the individual level, add some value.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the biggest topics, I think, globally. ADHD, people share their stories on social media. And It's interesting that you mentioned mostly males have ADHD compared to female patients. Is there any reason you think maybe the cause of male having more ADHD than females?
I think what they've discovered is that men don't necessarily have more ADHD. It's just easier to see. Because there were certain cultural expressions and psychological expressions that were more typically of boys than of girls. And in the olden days, they said boys acted the ADHD out and girls internalized the ADHD. But that can happen with both. I guess when we can get away from the pathologizing perspective, because we now speak of neurodiversity. There's a whole range of people who think differently. And if we can get to the stage where we can say, like with disability, we don't speak about disability, but other capabilities. If we can do the same in the mental health, we'll go a long way to destigmatize things that have been changed for people. Gender, age, the culture that you grow up in, the family culture that you grow up in, all of those things. And we know there's also the genetic component, that it's passed down. So in mental health, we would usually say the debate is not about is it nature or is it nurture. It's always both. There's always a inherited stylistic that we bring into this world, and then the shaping forces over the course of our life. And it's not nature or nurture, it's always nature and nurture. And very often people choose not to put their kids on medication. Sometimes it's more severe and they do need medication. But there are other strategies. If we can tell our kids that your gifting just looks different from what the norm expects of you. If I had ADHD as a child 300 years ago, I'd be the village hunter or the village warrior, you know, and people would praise me for being impulsive, reckless. It would have a function. And
it will be useful skill to have.
I would have rank and stature.
I guess it was called skill by then, not an illness, how it's called now.
So what we find with people who have ADHD is that they can deeply focus on things that they are passionate about. One of my earliest clients that I had come to me for ADHD is now an engineer. And this was the conversation I had with his parents. He's got giftings. Focus on his giftings and put strategies in place so that we can curtail the devastation of not fitting into a normative neurological society, and he'll do well. And he got a scholarship, an engineering program, and today he's on his way to chemical engineer.
That's interesting. Actually, I never thought this way before. It can be a gift or a problem to fix. It depends on the individual, the culture, where they live, what they do. It's very interesting.
For me, it often boils down to two words if we talk about mental health: compassion and courage.
Yeah.
Compassion to understand that person's lived reality. We're not in their shoes. We don't know what life is like for them. We don't know the ravages that goes on where nobody sees it. If I break my arm, it's great. I can walk with a cast and a sling and everybody goes, "Oh, sorry, man." If I carry the hurt inside of me, whether it's anxiety or depression or ADHD, nobody sees it. All they see is the little bit of the iceberg that sticks out at the top. So the compassion to actually stand in that person's shoes and understand where they're at and how life is for them. And acknowledge both strengths and weaknesses. And then the courage to do what is necessary to take the person from that lived reality to their place of most potential. Sometimes that reality doesn't change, but how we live with it, how it expresses itself, how optimal we are, those things are the things that we can tweak. So very often, the compassion without the courage doesn't move us forward. The courage without the compassion breaks us.
Yeah.
And so it's always that combination of courage and compassion.
Yeah, love it. The way you approach situations, you are not approaching situations seeing them as problems. So it's not, there is a problem, it have to be fixed. There's no problem. It's all about understanding and supporting them.
And I guess you and I both have children and younger children. And I guess this is where we can already start coaching them in that regard. I need to know when something is really a problem for them. But I can instill in them that freedom of choice to decide whether they want to define it as a problem or as a challenge. How to work with what I've been given and make it better, and how to actually support them there so that they can make it better.
I think the parents in this day and age, like including myself, yourself, and most of the parents around the world, more educated, more willing to understand children, spend time with children, whereas compared to my father's time or grandfather's time, now parents, I think, more involved in their children's life. And you're right, I think it's a very sensitive and important topic, I think, for parents, because these days parents put a lot of effort and energy to their children, to be children.
Way before I was a parent, I was introduced to a concept that probably saved me from making more mistakes as a parent than I did. And it's the idea of being a good enough parent. And I guess being in this age where we are, where we know so much, there's so much research, there's so much on social media of what to do, and the keeping up with the Joneses, comparing yourself to the neighbors next door and how they do stuff. Parents live a life in a petri dish where you feel that you're under scrutiny and you're being evaluated. And I guess the reality is you can only be a good enough parent for your children, and your kids would grow up telling you what you did wrong, but appreciating you for what you tried to do right and what you did achieve. And I guess the one thing that I take from the journey of parenting is aim to be good enough, divorce yourself from the idea of being the perfect parent, and find your own truth. You are a different parent than any of the other 8 billion people on the planet, and so are your children. And so your truth is going to look different to any of the other parents and families in the school, the neighborhood, the country, and be comfortable with that.
True. The point you made there, the stress is a lot more these days because the whole world is on your fingertips, and you can just open up the phone, go to social media, see all these parents all around the world, what they're doing. I think that puts a lot of pressure to parents these days, but what you're suggesting, I think that's very important to create a happy and meaningful environment for children and for parents. I mean, we need to be comfortable and happy as well.
I sat on a plane once next to a high-powered executive, and at that stage I was doing a coaching program for an organization for their middle managers. And we got talking about what's the most asked question that I find in this coaching program. And I said it's about work-life balance. Nowadays they just call it life balance, not work-life, because that's artificial separation. And so he said, yep, that resonates with him. So I asked him, what's your most valuable lesson in life balance? He said, when you are there, be present. So we don't always have control over how much time we have at home with our loved ones, with our children. But when you're there, be present. And my youngest one, is a good 11 years younger than the other siblings. So when he came around, you were forced to go back down on your knees, play Lego, roll on the grass, kick a ball. And it's so easy when you have a pressured life. Finances, you've got changes in work, you've got work pressures. You can be there on the grass rolling around, and you can be thinking about the agenda points on today that wasn't completed. Now you're going to do it tomorrow. And they pick up on it. Yeah. They can see the lights are on, but no one's home. And so that's one of in this world of complexity, I've become a passionate advocate of simplicity. Yes, go and explore the complexity, understand it, but then bring it home and apply it in the most simple form that works for you and your loved ones.
True.
Because that complexity can paralyze you. You know how they speak about analysis paralysis?
Yes.
So after all is said and done, so what for you? What does this mean for you? What
True.
are you going to do with it? And give me the one-liner.
Yeah.
That's all.
True.
And then we go from there.
I like how you described it. Light is on, but no one is on. So that's a great way of describing the situation. If you go back to the questions, let me ask you, looking towards the future, are there any services or expansions you are planning to do?
I haven't had much exposure to the business world, so that I think is the biggest leg of my journey, to take some of the learnings I've had previously in organizations, especially around coaching, the psychometric assessments, and the workplace health and safety stuff, with a focus on mental health in the workplace.
Great. And what advice would you give to someone seeking your services?
We've got two worlds of psychology in New Zealand. We've got the public and the private. And what I've seen and heard about public is that there's massive waiting lists. People wait 6, 12, 18 months to get services from psychology, psychiatry, and the mental health professions. And even in private practice, people wait. So if that wasn't an issue, I would say find somebody where you feel that there's a connection. Being a psychologist means that they've got all the bells and whistles that the psychology board requires of them. So technically they're all the same. Again, the thing that's going to make the difference is, can I relate? Is there the relatability factor? Do I feel comfortable? Very often when people come to individual therapy, they come with some of their biggest hurts, traumas, some of the biggest secrets that they've never told anyone. And it might not be horror stories, but it's personal stuff.
Yeah.
So if there's not a relationship basis, then the technical skills go out the window.
Sure.
So
True.
ask people, ask for references, ask people who've had experiences, and also just ask yourself, what do you need in that relationship? So I'm going to go there to do what? For that, what is the type of person that I need to journey through that for me?
True. I think you touched a very important point there, because it's a very personal service.
Very personal.
And even when people choose lawyers, accountants, business brokers like myself, it is a personal preference. It needs to be aligning with what your client's looking for. You need to make them comfortable working with you.
And also the journey is very personal. So it's sometimes one of the double-edged blades of being a psychologist just in private practice. You can't just have a locum stand in for you when you go on leave or when you're sick, because that relationship is so personal that there is very seldom anyone that can just quickly step in for you. So it puts a lot of pressure on psychologists in private practice for their own health, their own wellness, their sustainability with their clients. But my suggestion for anyone who wants to start their journey is find somebody who has the compassion to hold you in your most vulnerable moment and the courage to challenge you to become your best.
The thing you mentioned, that it puts a lot of stress and pressure to the psychologist. So what do you do to relax as a psychologist?
I guess that question isn't too different from anyone else. I can give you the stock standard answers of we have our own supervision and we have peer support and all of those things. But depending on who you are, you need to find that one thing that makes you get off the hamster wheel. My biggest challenge is I hardly ever stop thinking. So I need to find stuff that makes me stop thinking. So sometimes something like fly fishing, just concentrating on the fly.
That's
There's like
idea.
nothing else in your head, just keeping that fly going. Or diving for me,
Diving.
in the sea, on the sea, next to the sea. There's something that just makes the whirlwind of thought calm down a little bit.
True.
Exercise, always good. get the physical stress out of your body, to laugh, to be intentional about having fun.
They call it best medicine to have.
Oh, yes, for sure. There's even research around cancer patients and seeing the impact of laughter. If you look at the neurobiology of laughter, how you use a lot less muscles to laugh and how your body secretes certain neurotransmitters and hormones that are good for you when you laugh. So I guess, why so serious?
True. Why so serious?
And there are serious moments, but then we need to just balance them out.
That's right. All right, let's, hopefully the next question will give us some more laugh. Okay, so do you work with other healthcare professionals?
There's a really intricate web of multidisciplinary teams that operate sometimes not as together as it should, and the challenge is always to connect the dots between these different providers. But the idea is to work alongside people like physiotherapists, psychiatrists, occupational therapists, because a problem also does not just have multi-dimensional causes, but it also has multi-dimensional solutions. So as a psychologist, the one thing I need to know is, where does my scope of practice end? Where do I pass the baton on to the next health professional that can provide a complementary service to this person?
I guess if someone has some health issues, it could be some problems with the skin or something else, may need support from a psychologist to keep mentally strong as well while being treated for that.
Very often we see that there's a lesser understood relationship between spirit, soul, body, emotions, our environment. And we often, in a medical sense, do things quite pathologized and singular. Somebody presents with a skin rash and we treat it as eczema. But what's happening in the person as a whole? What's happening in their world with stress? What's the uncertainties that they're facing about the future? What's the internal conflicts? Because we know there's a strong relationship between your emotional state and your skin, or between your emotional state and what happens in your gut. And so those links are often not seen and falls by the wayside. So somebody ends up on skin treatment for 2 years, but may not necessarily see a psychologist.
True. For those interested in your services, what's the best approach to you and your services?
I don't have a website yet. That's on the to-do list for 2024.
Yeah.
Best at the moment would be via email, and I guess the other one would be just my phone.
Your phone. Okay. Thanks very much, Cobus. Anything
you,
else
Sada.
you want to mention at the
No,
end?
I really appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed this. I think there's a lot of space where we can do collaborative conversations like this, and with others, that can actually impact positively on the lives of others.
True. Thanks very much for coming. It's the very first conversation I had and first guest, and you helped me out with all this. We started all together.
In about 5 years from now, I can put it on my CV. I was there for the rise of the social media giant Saturday.
Thank you very much, Cobus. It's always a pleasure to have you, and we should catch up for barbecue soon.
For sure.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Adler.